Sexual harassment here consists of unwanted sexual attention that creates an adverse work environment. This includes not only unwanted touching but also obscene gestures, sex stereotype jokes, sexually oriented posters, and much, much more. The harassment may be by a member of the same or opposite sex, by a manager, a coworker, or even an outsider such as a contractor. If the harasser is a manager or an agent of the organization itself can be sued, not only just the individual, even if the organization itself had no knowledge of the situation. Now, there are two types of sexual harassment that violate the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Quid pro quo, just hiring, job benefits, or opportunities are contingent upon sexual favors. Or hostile environment. This is where the person being sexually harassed doesn't risk economic harm but experiences an offensive or intimidating work environment. Now, to prevent harassment, managers such as yourself can make sure their companies have an effective sexual harassment policy firmly in place within the organization. A formal complaint procedure should establish how charges will be investigated and resolved in the organization. Supervisors should all be trained in Title VII requirements and how to follow procedures when changes occur, or when charges occur. And charges should be investigated promptly and offenders disciplined at once within that organization. Okay, now let's move into the recruitment and selection section of Chapter 9. This is where we're talking about putting the right people into the right jobs. So we'll define recruitment here. Recruitment is the process of locating and attracting qualified applicants for jobs open in the organization. Those whose skills, abilities, and characteristics are best suited to fit your organization's needs. Now, recruitment is of two types, both internal and external. Now, internal recruiting means making people already employed by the organization aware of current job openings within your organization. Most vacant positions in organizations are filled through internal recruitment. Job posting is placing information about job vacancies and qualifications on such things as bulletin boards, newsletters, if you have a digital display system in your organization, or even on your organization's internal network known as your organization's intranet. Now, external recruiting means attracting job applicants from outside the organization. In years past, job notices were placed through newspapers, employment agencies, union hiring halls, college placement offices, executive recruiters, and so on. Today, more and more companies are using social media such as LinkedIn to recruit those outside employees or outside candidates to bring them into the organization. Now, which external recruiting methods work best? Seems to be that the most effective source are employee referrals. E-recruitment tools such as .job websites, membership directories, social networking sites, and industry list servers are also among effective ways for finding good candidates for your organization's needs. Now, a useful approach with external recruitment is the realistic job preview, which gives a candidate a picture of both positive and negative features of the job and organization before he or she is hired. People tend to quit less frequently and be more satisfied when employed. This recruitment technique is very effective at reducing turnover within the 30 to 90 days of employment era. I'll talk about the selection process. The selection process is the screening of job applicants to hire the best candidates for those open positions. There are three types of selection tools, and those are background information, interviewing, and employment tests. Now, background information is handled through application forms, resumes, and reference checks. Application forms and resumes provide basic background information about job applicants such as their citizenship, their education, their previous work history, and any type of certifications they may have. Now, having that information is great, but there is a lot of resume information consists of mild puffery. Now, in one survey found that 56% of resumes out there contained falsehoods of some sort, such as their education or gaps in their employment history. So many firms now use resume filtering software. Next, we talked about interviewing is the most common or most commonly used employee selection technique. These interviews can take place face to face, by video conference, phone interviews, or even over the internet. Now, to help eliminate bias, interviews can be designed, conducted, and evaluated by a committee of 3 or more people. You might have yourself sat through a team interview. At first, it may be a little intimidating, but it's kind of becoming the standard in business now is to have a committee of interviewers. And interviewing itself takes one of 3 forms. An unstructured interview, which involves asking probing questions to find out what the applicant is like. The structured interview involves asking each applicant the same questions and comparing their responses to a standardized set of answers for that question. Then lastly, the behavioral description interview, in which the interviewer explores what applicants have actually done in the past. And lastly, we talk about employee tests. And employee tests are legally considered to consist of any procedure used in the employment selection decision process. Ability tests measure physical abilities, strength and stamina, mechanical ability, mental abilities, as well as maybe possibly clerical abilities. Performance tests measure performance of an actual job task. Some companies have an assessment center in which management candidates participate in activities for a few days while being assessed by evaluators. Now, personality tests measure personality traits such as adjustment, energy, sociability, independence, and need for achievement. Most famous of these personality tests is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. Now, such tests should be used with caution because of the difficulty of measuring personality of characteristics. Now, 2 important legal considerations about any test are its reliability and its validity. Reliability is the degree to which a test measures the same thing consistently, so that an individual's score remains about the same over time, assuming the characteristics being measured also remain the same. Now, validity means that the test measures what it purports to measure and is free of any type of bias. Now we'll talk about Section 9.4, which is over orientation, training, and development. Now, employees are an important asset, and organizations can increase their value through effective orientation, training, and development of those new employees. That means for helping employees perform their jobs, our orientation, which is helping the newcomer fit smoothly into the job and the organization. And the first 6 months on the job can be critical for a new employee. This can be critical for how they perform over the long haul, not just how they do during that first 6 months, because that's when the psychological patterns are established with that employee. Now, whether formal or informal, the internal socialization period is designed to give new employees the information they need to be effective. The employees should emerge with information about the job routine, what is required in the job, how the work will be evaluated, and who the immediate coworkers and managers are. Should all emerge with information about the organization's mission and operations, its purpose, products or services, and its history, of course, and the organization's work rules and employee benefits, including matters of law affecting work operations. Now, I want to talk now about training and development. Even the best qualified employees, there are gaps in knowledge that are filled by training those employees in our organization. And the training process involves 5 steps, and they're shown here. We have training, which if you want to just think about that in a kind of a generic term, that refers to educating technical and operational employees in how to better do their current jobs. So if we're going to realize that someone does or does not train, we should look at this 5 steps here in this training process. First of all, let's do an assessment. Is there training needed? And then we look at objectives. Alright, what should training achieve now that we've decided they do need training? The selection, which training methods should be used? How should training be effective? And evaluation, is the training working? This should look similar to other processes we've talked about before, in that we are assessing, we are setting some goals or objectives, then we are figuring out which ones to implement, we do the implementation, and then we use feedback and reevaluate and see where we need to go back into our process at. So we talked a little bit about training. Now what about development of our employees? And development is a term describing educating professionals and managers in the skills they need to do their jobs in the future. Both training and development may be effected through on-the-job training methods as well as off-the-job training methods, where on-the-job training takes place in the work setting while employees are performing job-related tasks. Now, 4 major training methods for this are coaching, training positions, job rotation, where a person does a different job, learns that, and they move on to another so that they, now have new skills, as well as any type of planned work activities for training of individuals in your organization. And methods of off-the-job training include classroom programs, videotapes, and that's kind of a generic term, DVDs, whatever, workbooks that you may bring in or outside, and we might use something as like computer assisted instruction, CAI, computer assisted instruction, which are computers that are used to provide additional help to reduce instructional time. So you might have some type of kiosk set up that you can use for this computer assisted instruction. So you have both those to just think about. Alright, do we need to provide our employees with on-the-job training that's done while they're performing these job-related tasks, or is there might be a chance for some off-the-job training where they're not actually at their workstation learning. They might be elsewhere doing this, not really doing their core duties, but getting some training so that they can meet the requirements of our training and our development. Sometimes you might have to go and take a class outside, at a local community college or wherever, to keep your skills enhanced. Okay, now in section 9.5 we are talking about performance appraisal. And feedback about how you're doing at work is part of performance appraisal, which consists of assessing an employee's performance and providing him or her with feedback. Performance appraisal is essential to performance management, which is the continuous cycle of improving job performance through goal setting, feedback and coaching, and rewards and positive reinforcement. Now, the purpose of performance management is to focus employees on attaining goals that are tied to the organization's strategic goals and vision, and to evaluate how successful they were in accomplishing those goals. Now, appraisals are of 2 general types: objective appraisals and subjective appraisals. Objective appraisals are also called results appraisals. Those are based on facts and are often numerical. One good reason for having objective appraisals is that they measure results, not personalities. Now, subjective appraisals are based on a manager's perceptions of an employee's traits or behaviors. Trait appraisals are ratings of subjective attributes such as attitude, initiative, and leadership. Trait evaluations may be easy to use, but their validity is questionable. Behavioral appraisals measure specific, observable aspects of performance. Now, an example of this behavioral appraisal is the behaviorally anchored rating scale, which is also known as BARS, which rates employee graduations in performance according to scales of specific behaviors. Now, the point of performance appraisal is to stimulate better job performance. To do this, a manager can use 2 kinds of appraisals: formal and informal. Now, formal appraisals are conducted at specific times throughout the year and are based on performance measures that have been established in advance. Managers should give the employees feedback citing specific examples, and facts should always be used rather than just impressions. Now, informal appraisals are conducted on an unscheduled basis and consist of less rigorous indications of the employee's overall performance in the organization. Now let's take a look at the next section, which is over managing effective workforce in regards to compensation and benefits. Now, compensation has three parts: wages or salaries, incentives, and benefits. Let's take a look at wages and salaries. Base pay consists of the basic wage or salary paid employees in exchange for doing their jobs. The basic compensation is determined by factors such as the prevailing pay levels in the industry, what competitors of the organization are paying, whether jobs are unionized or not, if jobs are hazardous, what the individual's level is in the organization, and how much experience he or she has. Incentives. Many organizations offer incentives such as commissions, bonuses, profit sharing, and stock options. And benefits or fringe benefits are additional non-monetary forms of compensation designed to enrich the lives of all employees in the organization. Now, examples of these benefits are health insurance, dental insurance, life insurance, possibly retirement plans, whether you have to work holidays, so that time off for holidays, and so on and so forth. Just remember in your organization that benefits are expensive. A lot of times employees take these type of benefits as just for granted, but for the organization that's a lot of money that's being spent that they have to make sure they have enough profits to cover. Okay, section 9.7 is over managing promotions, transfers, discipline, and dismissals. Managers, as you're trained to become, or you may be now, you're just getting new, kind of touching up on your skills, but managers must manage these areas of promotions, transfers, discipline, and dismissals. Now, promotion is moving an employee to a higher level position. Three concerns of promotions are fairness, non-discrimination, and others' resentments. Transfer is the movement of an employee to a different job with similar responsibility, and it may occur for four different reasons. Maybe you're trying to solve organizational problems, such as when the organization needs an employee's skills in solving a particular problem. It may occur because you're broadening manager's experience. You may to retain manager's interest and motivation. And lastly, a transfer may occur because to solve some employee problems, such as personal differences with their bosses. Discipline and demotion. This is the threat of moving downward rather than upwards with, like we talked about with promotions. Poorly performing employees may be given a warning or reprimanded and then disciplined. An employee may be demoted, that is, have his or her current responsibilities, their pay, or such things taken away. And lastly, we talk about dismissals, and dismissals are of three types. Layoff suggests that a person has been dismissed temporarily. Downsizing is a permanent dismissal. There is no rehiring to be done later in the organization. And a firing tends to mean that a person was dismissed permanently for just cause. In the past, managers could use their discretion about dismissals. Today, an employer has to carefully document the reasons for these dismissals to avoid any type of legal issues. And we'll talk about the last section now, which is over labor management issues. And here we will introduce the term labor unions. Labor unions are organizations of employees formed to protect and advance their members' interests by bargaining with management over job-related issues. Now, once a union is recognized as an official bargaining unit, its representatives can then meet with management's representatives to do collective bargaining, negotiating pay and benefits and other work terms. When agreement is reached, the union representatives take the collective bargaining results back to its members for ratification, voting or accepting or possibly rejecting that contract. If members do vote yes, the union and management representatives sign a negotiated labor management contract. Now, recently you might have heard of right-to-work laws, and right-to-work laws are statutes that prohibit employees from being required to join a union as a condition of employment in an organization that has an established union. As of mid-2012, 22 states had passed these laws allowed under the Taft-Hartley Act. The unions often tried to negotiate a cost of living clause, or COLA laws, that ties future wage increases during the period of the contract to increase in the cost of living as measured by the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. During tough economic times, management and labor may decide to negotiate givebacks in which the union agrees to give up some previous wage or benefit gains in return for something else, such as job security for its members. Now, to avoid strikes, labor management disputes may be resolved through grievance procedures or through mediation or arbitration. And a grievance is a complaint made by an employee that management has violated the terms of the labor management process or the labor management agreement. Grievance procedures are often handled initially by the employee supervisor and the union shop steward, which is an official elected by the union membership who works at the company and represents interests of unionized employees on a daily basis. Now, if the process is not successful, the grievance may be carried to the union's chief shop steward and then to the union's grievance committee, who deal with their counterparts higher up in management. If the grievance procedure is still not successful, the two sides can try to resolve their differences through mediation or arbitration. Mediation is the process in which a neutral third party, a mediator, listens to both sides in a dispute, makes suggestions, and encourages both sides to agree on a solution. The last step there, the arbitration, is the process in which a neutral third party, an arbitrator, listens to both parties in a dispute and makes a decision that the parties have agreed with will be binding on them. So that's a little bit about labor unions in an organization. Perhaps you've already worked in an organization that has a union. You know how unions work, or perhaps you've just always worked in a non-union environment. Now you know a little bit more information that if you are going to be a manager in an organization that has a union, you'll know what to expect and some of those key terms of how to interact and what the proceedings are. That's it for Chapter 9 over Human Resource Management. Thank you guys for joining along, and hopefully we'll see you in the next chapter, in Chapter 10, which will cover organizational change and innovation.